Today I'm using Dreamweaver 2014.1. This is the .1 update to create a 2-column header footer layout, 960 pixels width and 1000 pixels height. And it'll have all the same content you see right here. All these divs will be created, and the majority of them will be created with HTML5 elements. And we'll have a wrapper, which is 960 by 1000, which will be a square that holds everything in. So I'm going to open up Dreamweaver. This is what you see when you open up Dreamweaver with the .1 update. What Dreamweaver does now will import a PSD file with all its layers from Photoshop and have pictures, text, everything editable in Dreamweaver, and you're able to create a web page out of it. But for our purposes, we're not going to use that. But I'll show you what it looks like. Basically, this is what it would look like. And the interface now is a little bit different when you're looking at things like selectors and things like that, and you're actually creating. So I don't want the extract panel. I'm going to close out of that, and I'm going to close out of this. Back to new. Create, do split, make sure I'm in the design mode here. And I want my code on the left and my design view on the right. If you don't like it that way, you can go to view, you can go split vertically. You can change this code view from the top to the bottom if you want to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do here to set up the interface is go to Window, go to Workspace Layout. I'm still in Extract. Extract meaning to extract a PSD file from Photoshop. So I want to go into the design mode. So now I'm into the design mode, and I have the windows open now. These extra windows you see. CSS Designer, Files, Insert, Files and Insert. When you go into it, if you see more windows than this, you can just take the windows out, drag them, and click out of them. We don't need the at media. We do need the selectors. We do need the properties. So the first thing we're going to do, if you look over here, you see there's a place for the HTML, all the divs, which will be in between the body tags. We don't have a CSS yet. So I have the option of creating a new CSS file and linking to it, or attaching one that's already been created, or defining in page. For my purposes, defining in page is going to be the option I want to use. So you see now I have the two style tags, so all my CSS is going to go in between those. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the Insert panel. And the two things we're concerned with here is structure. You see you have the HTML5 elements that have been standardized, like header, navigation, main, aside, article, section, footer, figure, and structure. And if you go to common, one thing you see that you don't see in structure is you see insert image, which we don't need. All we're going to be using is the structure elements here. And you still have the generic div, which you can use in HTML5. They don't have a element for a container or a wrapper, so you have to use a generic div. So you click on, make sure you're in design mode, and you click on div. And we're going to want to put this first div right in between the body tags. So after start of tag body. So it's going to be right where it is right now. And I'm going to give this an ID, and I'm going to call it wrapper. The good thing about using a term that people are familiar with, so now I'm going to do a new CSS rule. And this is a second check basically right here. Say OK. Now two things I'm concerned with here, for my purposes, are going to be the background color, because I want to be able to see what I'm building. I don't want it to be white. Click on this. And the size. Make sure these are pixels. And only for this one, because it's going to be centered, holding everything in. This div, I'm going to do a right auto and left auto for margin. So that gives equal force on each side, meaning it's going to stay centered. So the next thing I'm going to do is hit apply. And I see all my CSS has been added up here. Now I hit OK. And I'm going back to the, right back to the original first. So the next div is going to be a header. It's going to go right up top. So I'm going to use an HTML5 element. I could use a div and just call it header, but by using an HTML5 element, it actually works better for the after start of tag. It actually works better for the search engines. So I'm staying inside of the wrapper for the header because I don't want this to be on the outside. And now I'm going to give this an ID of top, because maybe I'm going to use more than one header, but I'm not going to. But in the event I was going to. So this is second check. So I want to give it a background color. I'll give it that. I know my width is 960, and I'm going to give it a height of 200. And by default, it goes right up to the top of the page. I hit apply. OK. You see my CSS has been added. Okay, so now I have that up there. So up to the div. And I want to come after. I don't want to be inside the header tag. I want to come after the header tag. So I look for header, which is top. I call that top. And give this I'll just give it I'll say side. I could say side left. If I was going to put two sidebars, I'd do a side left and a side right. So that's how giving it an ID works to your advantage. This is all okay. Give it a background color so I can see it again. And go to box. These are the only two things we're concerned with right now. And I'm going to make this float to the left, so it goes over here. If I make it float to the right, it goes over here. But I'm floating it to the left. Just apply. So now I have my sidebar. So the next area, I have a choice of using main or article or section, even footer if I wanted to, or figure. But all of these elements work together, which makes it a little bit different. There's a sheet called the HTML element flowchart, HTML5 element flowchart, and this tells you how all the elements work together in HTML5, because you just don't use them randomly. They all, and you do this to increase the potency of your ranking in the search engines. So the next div I add, I'm going to add a article. And it's going to come after the sidebar. So it's going to come after tag, side left, which is what I call the sidebar. I'm going to give it a ID of news. I do new CSS rules so I can configure the CSS. And I'm going to float this to the right. I'm going to do apply. In order to do this layout, I have one div left, which is going to be the footer. And again, I'm going to use an HTML element. So I come down here to footer. And I want this to come in after the tag, which is news right here. I'm going to call this foot. You can do 2 footers if you want, or 3 or 4. Do new CSS rule. And I'm going to float this to the left just to make sure it comes over. Apply. Okay. And there's my footer. Now the one thing we haven't done, we have no way of configuring the background, the environment that this fixed width layout sits in. So I'm going to go to selectors over here. Click on that and put body. So now I have, you can always click up here and you'll see all your selectors. Here's all your configurations down here. That would be for the top, side left. So now I have body. And I have body over here in the CSS. So if I want to go and change the background color, either I can scroll down to it, or if I click over these icons, I see what they do. And I can click that and go straight to the color. And I have my background color. So that should help. Thanks. Bye.